What's up, tribe? So you want to know whether you should be stretching or doing flexibility training at the same time as your super accumulation program. Today, I'm going to share some insight and get Phil's opinions on the matter as well. We're going to go deep into flexibility and overtraining. What's up, everyone? We are back, and we are back with a vengeance. This is a great question.
That's
Yani, you had one
guys.
job, mate.
My bad.
Turn off your computer.
One job. We got a great question here from Simon Schultz. Simon is moving into phase four of the pre-planned program, the UMS, after you do the structural balance, or what we call our foundations program, is superaccumulation, and it's an introduction of superaccumulation. We have sort of two versions. The version that we use to introduce the concept of prescribed overreaching, and then we have the more advanced version that I've just done, which is where you really take it to the next level. First program is really about greasing the groove. Phil and I spoke about this before. And then the second version of it is really going to push your body and overtrain you and get a bunch of that super compensatory effect from it.
All right, pause. What is superaccumulation?
Ooh.
Okay,
so
this is not common vernacular for a lot of people, so let's strip things back, pause, and just really briefly, what is it?
Superaccumulation is a sexy term that, as far as I know, was coined by the late Charles Poliquin. It was his version of prescribed overreaching. Prescribed overreaching is specifically designing a program to overtrain your body. Essentially, you're hitting it with a secondary or a third bout of stimulus before the initial stimulus is fully repaired in the body. There is a sort of known concept in strength and conditioning called supercompensation, or the supercompensation effect. And it's basically about the process of stimulating the body enough to cause damage, metabolic damage to the tissues, and then the body tends to sort of take about 72 hours to fully recover. And if you then stimulate again at that 72-hour period, you continually progress the body's adaptation and response. But if you hit it too early within that 72-hour window, you can, if you do that, you hit it too early, you're not allowing the body to fully recover, so you're effectively not getting the maximum benefit from your training. And if you do that too often, then you can overtrain, and you can experience the side effects to overtraining, which Phil would probably be able to share more than me. I think it's rarer than people think. But you can use this, like anything, you can use this as a variable to sort of elicit a faster response in the body, and that's sort of what we do with prescribed overreaching.
Yeah, so for people who have been following what we've been talking about for the last few months, they would have clued on that we're pretty big about load management as being one of the key things that keeps you training well, continually progressing and not getting held back by injury, because one of the, real problems with people and trying to achieve their goals is they, go really hard and then they drop off and end up being injured and take a bit of time off, and then they go really hard again because they're back to it, and then they go drop off again. So I can imagine it might be a bit confusing for a few people who are listening to this and being like, hey, you've just hopped on so much about, gradually ramping things up. So how does superaccumulation fit into it? And so I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that and explain that when it comes to superaccumulation, you're definitely not starting off like this. This isn't your introductory program. As Yani said, you're starting off doing the foundations program. And then when you're getting into a superaccumulation, you won't be doing the same session that Yani's doing for his superaccumulation, because with Yani, he's been doing this for, 16 years, and his training age for this type of training is a whole lot older. So that means that his tissues, his connective tissues, his muscles, his joints, everything has had much more time to adapt to it. So he has more sort of leeway with his superaccumulation training. So if you think about the capacity sort of piece that we've been talking about before, with how big your bucket is, and then the load being how much water you're turning on, when you've got that older training age, then you've got a bit more sort of leeway either side, where you got that bigger bucket where you can handle like overreaching just that little bit more. But if you're quite new to this and you haven't done overreaching before, you haven't played around with those variables of, shorter recovery times and, more frequency in your training, then you won't have that leeway. And so this first stage superaccumulation is all about just like exposing yourself to a little bit of that without just thinking, hey, I'm superaccumulation phase, I'm going to wreck myself and then,
absolutely
be fine.
Absolutely. So that's very important. It's not my first rodeo with superaccumulation, and I will put it to you that, and some of you will argue, why do we do it then after this comment? But I've probably done superaccumulation in my training age a dozen times, and out of that dozen times, I'd say 40% would have resulted in me suffering some form of an acute, maybe an overuse injury. I was going to say acute injury, but that's not true. You are, when you get to the stage where your body is, fairly well prepared for this sort of thing, you push yourself pretty hard, and it becomes a bit of a balancing act, because the results are, the first time you sort of do it, it's quite astonishing, how much strength you can gain in as little as 2 or 3 weeks. But like Phil has pointed out here, the work before that is so important. And so we introduce a sort of watered down version of the superaccumulation program we call the Superhuman Strength Program, that we introduce after 3 full phases. Each phase of each mesocycle is 6 weeks, so that's a minimum of 18 weeks of consistent strength training to prepare the body before we even introduce the watered down version of this. And the watered down version is designed to do 2 things, and 2 things only: introduce barbells in a safe way, and then grease the groove of the foundational barbell movements to such a degree that when you come out of that 4-week phase, you are really, really fluent. Is that what I'm trying to say?
I think fluent's a nice way of putting it. Like
on barbell lifting,
Yeah.
And so it's not really designed to overload the body. It's designed to reinforce really solid movement patterns.
Yeah, and exposing with that real frequency of the training, which can
That's
be...
right. The reps and the, sorry to cut you off, the reps are key, not the intensity. The volume is key in this one, not the intensity.
Yeah, which is that greasing the groove term that Yani uses sometimes, that idea that, you're not like busting yourself to do everything as hard as you can, but you're just turning up, you're doing, really consistent, fairly easy reps, but with such a higher frequency than you usually do to get used to these skills. Because with skill development, so much of it does come down to frequency of practice. And if you can do little bits often, then you're going to get much more conditioned to these movements, and your learning process is going to be that much stronger. Now, that's only if you're learning the right stuff. So make sure when you are doing your barbell lifts, especially if you haven't done it much before, it's so useful to be getting feedback. That might be feedback from yourself, just recording yourself and having a look and seeing if things feel right or look right. But, for a lot of people out there who haven't been trained in this sort of stuff, it's, you often don't know what you're looking for. So that's where a group like this, where we've moved to, the Facebook group for this purpose, is that you can put your videos up there and people can help critique it. And you can learn so much from reading those comments and then, putting your 2 cents in about what you think, and then having other people, with that discussion. So it's such a valuable tool. And when you're doing these superaccumulation phases, it's a great time to, if you spend the 2 weeks of doing this, or
the advanced program, once you go beyond that concept of greasing the groove and you're really trying to overload the body, then 2 weeks is the maximum you will ever do.
Yeah. So say if it's 2 weeks, if you've greased a groove that is maybe not the ideal groove, then that's a lot of time that could have been used more effectively. So make sure when you are doing this that you're really dialed in on what you're doing, and the UMS Mastermind group is just the perfect place to do that. Or better yet, the online coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, that is something that I want everyone to really, really, really just let marinate for a while, what we've just talked about, because it's very important. There's going to be a lot of people in here who become interested in this concept of prescribed overreaching and superhuman strength. It all sounds pretty amazing, and the results you get are pretty amazing. But, Simon, who's asked this question, he has gone through the Foundations program properly, and he's got a prior history of exercise, so he is ready to take on this next sort of phase. It's important, and we do sell the Superhuman Strength Program, the entry version of it, as a standalone product to people who are trying to bust through plateaus. But the key there is that they're trying to bust through a plateau that they have experienced based on the fact that they are already doing a lot of weightlifting and a lot of strength training. And so
with any type of training, there's often going to be diminishing returns. With if you keep doing the same thing, you'll progress, but you'll start to progress slower and slower. So the superhuman strength program, this overreaching, is a really useful way of, when you've started to see those diminishing returns in turning up and doing your regular thing, it's just a way of getting through that plateau, making sure you then give yourself adequate time to rest and regenerate and get stronger, and then you've kind of got a new base level that you're then starting off and working forward. So that's where it's a really that's the use case for this type of training. It's, if you keep on training regularly and you keep on seeing consistent great gains, then I wouldn't stress about doing a super accumulation. You've already got adequate stimulus, which means that you're going to keep progressing. But if you have an adequate stimulus to keep progressing, it also means that you're really already overloading yourself and quite a lot. So if you add in super accumulation while you're already seeing consistent, pretty good gains, then you're probably more at risk than people who have plateaued.
Yeah, that's exactly
for
right.
Injury.
That's exactly right. So let's make it clear who this is for. It's for people who are very consistently strength training already, who have laid their foundation through lots and lots of volume, good form, who understand how to fail properly. And by that I mean when you fail under a lift, let's take a barbell back squat for instance, the failure occurs in the muscles that you're trying to stimulate, the legs, not in your posture. If you fail in a barbell bench press, you fail in the pecs and maybe the triceps. You don't fail in losing the structure and the brace. If you fail in a deadlift, you're not failing by round backing or cat backing halfway through your lift. You're failing because you literally lose the ability to hinge in the hips. And that's very, very important. To set that foundation requires banking a lot of repetitions.
I just wish that, if I could get people, everyone in the world to know one thing about training, I think that would be just such a useful thing, because you see those gym fail videos where people are just doing horrendous things, because you can see that they're the muscles that they're trying to train have failed a long time
ago,
or they just not
they're
using
not even
them.
getting the chance.
They're not getting the chance because they just have a weak point in that movement. So
yeah, that's exactly
people
right.
could save themselves a lot of injuries if they got this sort of stuff right, and that's why I'm so I'm pushing the making sure you're greasing the right grooves in a big way. I think it's so important that you get that right, and use the program, use the Facebook group to check.
I will say, and this is a big statement, 9 times out of 10, okay, let's be realistic. I reckon 70% of the time when I watch a video that someone submitted or I watch someone in the gym fail, the failure is not occurring in the right area of the body.
Yeah.
And that means that there's piss poor load management going on. That means that someone's become impatient and they're trying to overload a movement that they haven't fully mastered yet.
Yeah.
And
so load management, also technique. Technique is key, and I feel like I've a lot of the times with my physio treatments, what I'm doing is just nailing down technique, and people have the same sort of shoulder, but suddenly it doesn't hurt when you're doing things correctly. So part of it is load management, and part of it is getting that technique right. So.
And technique just takes volume. It takes repetition. It takes patience. It takes...
And intention.
This is right. There's so many great insights that you'll be able to pull out of this, and I'm going to go a little bit deeper. A lot of people don't understand that both in flexibility training and in strength training, the majority of the adaptation process is occurring in the central nervous system, not in the actual muscle tissue itself. Out of 6 different strength adaptations that occur when you're building strength, how many times can I say strength in the one sentence? Strength. Out of the 6 different strength adaptations that are occurring, 5 of them occur in the brain and the central nervous system. So you need to understand that and that sort of takes time. It takes time. You've got the nervous system coordinating the different sequencing of muscle firing at the same time to produce the right movement. You've got the program for that movement to be reinforced over and over again in the brain. You've got all these different amazing things occurring.
And I've said it a few times, it takes time, but it also takes intention. So make sure you are really thinking about what you're doing, and you're getting someone else to check what you're doing, because you can think you're doing the right thing, but if you're not experienced with this stuff, it's really hard. And it's simple movements, a squat looks like a pretty simple thing to do, but there are a million different ways to do a squat just by changing how far forward your knees are, how far back your hips are, where your foot position is, where your back is. So you might think, that looks like a squat, but there's so many things to it. So make sure you're getting, using this resource and getting it checked.
Videos. There's a great saying, and I don't remember who said it, but someone who's a coach. It could have been Christopher Summers, who's the Gymnastics Bodies founder. Practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
100%.
And that's, that's really, really quite important.
So we'll get on to the specifics of this questions
Simon's,
now that we've if you have any more questions about super accumulation, get them in here. And if you have any questions about anything, put them in here and we'll get to it at the end of the show. But
absolutely.
Now for
very
Simon's
quickly before
question.
we do, just quickly have a say hello to Kwok, Kumaran, Wayne, thank you for joining us, and Jay, thank you for joining us. He's saying here it's midnight here in the UK, so that's pretty awesome. Go to bed, God damn it, you shouldn't be awake.
Sleep is important. Aren't you listening?
Yeah.
Aren't you listening, Jay?
No, it's great to have you on the stream, Jay.
Yeah. And Quark's got a question here about how would you program in super accumulation, which is kind of what we're getting into here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'll read out the question because it's very specific to this, and it's a great question. And I have had a recent experience that sort of makes me feel a certain way about this, and it was good to have a bit of a discussion with Phil before we came on to get his opinions. So Simon's said, with supercompensation, superaccumulation, they're the same thing, program and dedicated rest times, is it recommended to still include end range strength mobility training between sets as the focus is on strength accumulation? If so, will learning or practicing end range strength on the rest days, which in the beginner program is Tuesday and Saturday, be an issue to keep routine and learn the skills efficiently so that I can include them in the next phase? Now, I'll share my experience first, and then you can share what we talked about before. So my experience recently was when I did the superaccumulation program. I did a variation of it, and my variation included training 9 times a week for 2 weeks. So twice a day on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, once a day on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then rest on Sunday.
This is different to the beginners program.
This is different to the beginners program, which you train, I'm pretty sure it's 6 times in 7 days instead of 9. Now, I decided, because there's so much strength training, I decided not to include mobility training because, as Phil's going to talk about here, mobility training, especially the way we train it, and particularly end-range strength development, is load on the body, and you have to manage how much load you expose your body to. And so I made the choice of focusing just on the specific lifts and not doing as much mobility work between sets. And with the
plan to then have the rest week as being a big mobility week.
Yeah, that's right. So I plan to take 5 days off and do absolutely nothing, which is what the prescription suggests. You basically sleep, eat, and if you can fathom it, have as much sex as possible to really stimulate testosterone production. That is literally in the literature. And so I did that, and then after the 5 days, I came back and really started focusing on strength, on flexibility, and I'd planned to do a week of very specific, quite intense flexibility training for that week, and then go back and repeat the cycle. Why was I doing this? Because I'm about to turn 40, and I like to be in the best shape of my life for my decade birthdays. Now, a week and a half into the program, I started to experience an overuse injury in my hip, which started with sort of symptoms of low back pain in the left side and a lot of sort of TFL, hip flexor. You sort of massaged me. It was kind of all over that whole hip area, wasn't it? Glutes.
An angry hip.
It was an angry hip, yeah. And it got so bad that I had to drop the last 2 days of the program. I couldn't finish the program because every time I moved, it started to affect my strength. I couldn't even lift my knee up. My hip flexor was just in so much discomfort. So I ended up not doing the Friday or Saturday workouts and starting the rest period early. Did my rest period strictly 5 days, and then I came back in and started doing the flexibility training. And my first day, it got really quite severe, and even during the 5-day rest period, the pain continued to increase, the discomfort continued to increase. And then after my first day of doing mobility, it almost went away completely. And I'd had a massage in the meantime with Phil, and it was intense. He got dug into the hip flexors and that whole area, and it was really inflamed. So, my theory is that, and it's common when you do superaccumulation that something sort of flares up like this, but I sort of thought, because I'm so used to doing a 1-to-1 ratio of strength and flexibility, my body's really got used to that. And when I removed the flexibility training, it sort of made me a little bit more vulnerable. And so if I was to do the program again, which I will do soon, I'm going to include the flexibility training, but it will have to be at the expense of some of the weightlifting. And Phil can explain why.
Yeah, as I guess we've talked about so much before, like the body gets really used to sort of what you spend your time doing. So if you've been doing training where you've got that combination of flexibility and strength training like you do in the UMS, then your body's really like used to that and is adapted to it, and so it makes total sense that when you take out that flexibility and you're just doing strength training, that kind of change could potentially throw a spanner in the works. But yeah, I guess when Yani sort of told me his theory before we recorded the show, my kind of like pushback to that was that when people often don't really respect stretching as a load, and when we think about total load management, especially if you're adding in end range strength there, then that can really just you're already super accumulating with your strength, and then with Charles Poliquin stuff, that wouldn't have had that initial prescription, that wouldn't have had like stretching and especially end range strength on top of that. So really, like he's put like a high bar, like you're suddenly doing a whole lot more than say if your thresholds here, and your your super accumulation is a whole lot higher than that. Then suddenly if you're adding on end range strength and flexibility, then that's adding just a whole nother level of load as well. So I think it's really important to consider those things we talked about earlier in the session about your training age and how much time you've given your body to adapt, and you have more of a buffer if you've been doing things for longer. But you can see here with Yanni that even someone who's been doing this a long time, like still if you're really pushing yourself, then it's quite likely that some little niggle can flare up. So I just encourage you, Simon, if you're really focused on I guess flexibility as your main goal, then doing what Yanni is talking about for his next session, where he'll be like taking out a bit of the strength training to add in more of the end range strength, and that's a way of keeping that total load at a more appropriate level. But if you're really looking to use this time to get strong, then I'd leave it out but I'd recommend, even with Yanni next time, keeping in low-level mobility work. So just like Rad's talked about with the difference between that stretching training versus mobility. Mobility is all about just moving your body through its available range. And I think that's that's something you didn't have in that last session. I think it's probably a nice idea just to try and
I'll be honest, guys,
groove.
I kicked myself after it because I didn't even do our regular warm-up. I just became very focused on my strength routines, because when you're doing 2 strength routines a day, they can blow out quite severely, quite quickly, and it's psychologically quite battering just to think, okay, I'm squatting today, I've got to squat again tomorrow, I've got to squat every day for 6 days straight, then I get 1 rest day. And then on 3 of those squat days, I'm also snatch grip deficit deadlifting. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up on our YouTube channel.
Not a comfortable movement.
Which is it's not an easy movement, and it's just...
And you're doing 10 sets of 6 reps.
6 reps at slow tempo. It's a grueling program. And so my brain just very quickly went, eliminate all unessentials, non-essentials. Thinking, okay, even our warm-up is not non-essential. So I did exercise-specific warm-up on the movements I was doing, but I didn't go through the mobility warm-up. And I think that came at a cost. And it's really silly because I know through experience and through the years of developing these programs why we have these components of the program in place. And so I really, should have practiced what I preached.
Sounds like a bit of an essential that you've taken
that I've removed, And hey, look, a lot of this is trial and error, guys. And this is the good thing is that this is why we like to trial and things and learn from our wins and losses.
And as I've often said, like, so much of injury comes down to human nature, and it's totally understandable. You're training 4 hours a day, and when you think about adding another any more on top of that, like it's totally understandable. You're on that warpath to get strong, and if you kind of get everything else out of the way, then it makes sense. But
that's exactly right. So look, there was a lot of ego in my mistake. Where it came from was that I'd done a month of travel, and I'd lost a lot of conditioning during that month. So I came back, did the first month to just get reconditioned, and I literally just did our classes in the gym here for an hour a day. And then I plan to do super accumulation twice, to first time to get me back to my baseline before I'd gone away, second time to actually improve my strength based on last year. And I sort of paid the price of probably doing things a little bit silly and a little bit egocentric, and that's, you live and you learn. There's always an element of trial and error in your training when you get to my level. So,
and I think that's like a really key thing. Like, it's clearly not a huge deal for Yani. Like, it's annoying, like, certainly, but you learn from it and you move on. Like, I think people can really get just totally sidetracked by injuries, and it then end up being a real downward spiral that just kicks you out of all good sort of healthy habits and routine of training. So you can see with Yani, it's like, okay, I screwed that up, learning from it, moving on. So I think that's just such a key thing that I wish more people would do. Like, respect your body's ability to deal with it, move on, and keep training.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, our bodies are amazing things, and they adapt to what we expose them to very, very well. Those adaptations tend to happen a little slower as you get a bit older, but they still do occur, and they will continue to occur until the day you die. So
just respect that journey.
Just respect the journey and respect the process, and the process for me right now is sort of going back to the drawing board, dusting my shoulders off and having another run at the prescribed overreaching mountain, and I'm excited about it. It's just one of those things. I also, at the same time, and there's a lot of factors, and this is another factor that needs to be considered. I have this tendency when I do prescribed overreaching to just hit the effort button on my diet, because you're training so much and you're burning so many calories, and the changes in body composition happen very fast and like quite amazing. You first of all, you have a permanent blood gorging in the body, meaning that you're permanently jacked because you're training every day, almost twice a day. So there's no room for the blood gorging to sort of dissipate in the muscles.
2-week party pump.
You literally get a 2-week party pump, and you look amazing, you feel amazing, your ego starts to inflate, and then from there you just start to go, I just need to get calories in, because it is important to really get enough calories in. And because I do intermittent fasting still, or still time restricted eating, I only have a short window of opportunity of 8 hours to eat every day and get that amount of calories and protein in. I just started eating crap. I started eating a lot more carbohydrate than I usually eat, lots of bread. Started going through loaves of Lebanese bread and hummus to just get calories in. I started to eat ice cream on the weekends, like a litre of Ben & Jerry's ice cream to get calories in. And all of that, when I spoke to Phil, he said, you're probably seriously inflamed,
like the
possibility.
Kind of chronic inflammation that happens when you do have these, for one, overtraining. Like, that's inflammation is an important part of the, how you're adapting, but that's kind of the acute inflammation of the actual exercises. But that chronic systemic inflammation from stress, sleep, diet, like, that can really start to kind of, as we've talked about in the pain science before, turn up and turn down certain signals, and Yani's in a bit of a world of hurt this week in all parts of his body, and it's likely that.
Yeah, that's right.
Or he might have coronavirus, could have the flu. Who knows?
We'll see. We'll see in a couple of weeks what happens. Yeah. But
we might be doing this show with plastic bottles on our head, like the videos, the photos we had a look at.
We had a look at some funny photos of people in different parts of the world trying to protect themselves from the coronavirus.
Yeah, a terrible thing, but
there is some humour coming out of it, and good too. There's a lot less pollution apparently in China because the factory. Have you seen that?
No.
I'm deadly serious. They had this on the news last night. I digress a little bit, but the pollution in China is dramatically reducing.
Yeah, right. Better air quality.
Yeah, better air quality. Yeah. Nice. Anyway,
okay.
I don't want to digress too much. Okay, guys, that's pretty much the show. We don't have any more questions coming in.
Yeah, hopefully, Kwok, that we didn't talk too much about the exact of programming here, because as you can see, the programming depends on sort of what stage you're at, and you're pretty advanced, so you're probably more on the Yani end of the spectrum if you were to do superaccumulation, whereas that would be quite different advice, and it really comes down to your sort of specifics of what your goals are and how long you've been training. So if you do need any more help with that, then
hit us up, Quack, if you want, and I'll send you our my version of the superaccumulation program. I'll share it with you, guys.
Nice work on the I had a look at your street workout stuff the other day, where he's like swinging around on bars doing all sorts of amazing acrobatic stuff.
No, I didn't see it.
So impressed.
Yeah, awesome.
What a beast.
I didn't see it. Guys, very, very quick summary. Superaccumulation is very personal to where your training age is. You need to still manage load. The introduction of flexibility training, specifically end range strength training, is going to add to that load, so it needs to be taken into consideration.
And I'd argue you don't even need to do it if you still are doing the regular amount of training and progressing at a satisfying rate. It's it's a plateau buster, not a let's have
just do it.
Like
that's sure. Look, make no mistakes. Doing a super accumulation program properly, especially the advanced version or the type of super accumulation that I'm doing, is not fun at all. It makes you feel absolutely crap. It's designed to deplete everything, including testosterone in your body, which can lead to depression, which it often does. Towards the end of it, you will become a real nightmare to be around. Everyone will hate you, and so will your body.
But you'll have a 2-week party pump. So.
But you have a 2-week party pump, and you'll come out the other side stronger. And that's one of the reasons why we do it. We do it because it makes us stronger, both in mind and in body. All right, guys, that's it. Tomorrow we have a really, really good question in regards to how to progress calisthenics movements in an intensification phase of programming. We're going to talk about 2 incredible cheat sheets that we use here at Unity Gym called our Ultimate Isometric Strength Formula and our Ultimate Eccentric Strength Formula, and we're going to give you guys an opportunity to grab a free copy of both of those. We have them printed on the wall here. We're actually in the process of getting them redone by a graphic designer, so they look much prettier. I designed them originally, and they look amazing, but they can always look better. Yeah. Anyway, so tune in tomorrow if you want to if you want to grab a copy of those and understand how to progress your Cali in intensification.
Yep. And share the podcast with people. And I'm still waiting on a message from through the podcast platform. You can record a voice message.
Be the first.
Yeah, you get a prize. We've told you get a prize. Don't know what the prize is yet, but whoever gets
we'll think of something really
find
good.
it. So.
Thanks for everyone for joining us on the live stream. Big shout out to everyone watching later on YouTube, and a massive shout out to everyone listening on the podcast. We love you. Give us a 5-star review. It goes a long way to the search algorithm. And until tomorrow, see you soon. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.